Okay, how y'all doing today? This is the Narrative Matters. I am your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, the best film writer and director in St. Louis. Facts, award-winning, published author, journalist, activist, business owner, Lacey G. Souldier Turner. Today, I am here with one of the most iconic figures of hip hop, scholars, speaker, one of the greatest actors to me, growing up. Christopher Play Martin, welcome.
Where's that person at?
I'm looking at him right now.
I thought they were behind me, but well, down at this wall. And I appreciate that from your. We'll call it prophetic from your lips to God's ears. We'll call most of that prophetic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. Able to come to the platform, and appreciate you letting me being able to write an article on you also.
Well, thank you for your patience. I mean, a lot of your viewers and listeners don't know, it was a while in the making for this to take place due to my schedule and all. And even now, here we are in a hotel suite. That's my life. So, thank you for your patience, and it's glad to be at your house. I'm glad to be at your house party.
Hey, no problem. All right, let's get right into it. So, for my viewers who don't know, where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Queens, New York. First, my parents lived in Jamaica, Queens, and then they eventually moved because they outgrew their spot with myself and my three other sisters to an historical place called East Elmhurst, Queens. The Hearst Corona. The East Elmhurst was called the Hearst. Then you had Corona. But, we could get into it later, but a lot of other people beside myself came out of that area. But yeah, Jamaica, Queens.
Okay. And I saw that you said when you were growing up, you was looking up, I guess, to the gangster, you saying it was black exploitation films, and you say you got kicked out of 5 schools and you was a stick-up kid. What advice, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and they call us each year to say we're in the top 3, violent cities. What is your advice to people who are committing crimes and, think that's the only way out? You know what I'm saying? What is your advice to them as you done that and then came up out of it?
Well, I mean, I don't glorify it when I tell that story. I come from the perspective of being a accident waiting to happen, an eventual statistic, jail or early death. I was a fool about it. Really, just a very stupid kid. I didn't have the luxury that most have today, where you can aspire and be able to have a reference of a rapper or a performer, entertainer. There was no such thing as what would be eventually called hip hop then. So my father being active and successful to a degree in the streets, me looking up to people at the time such as Nicky Bonds, Guy Fisher, Fat Cat, Alpo, Bimmy. There's a whole list of those were what we call your ghetto superstars, so to speak. So based on watching my father in the home, who was very much like the ones you saw or I watched in those black exploitation films, Superfly, Hell Up in Harlem, Cotton Comes to Harlem, all of those, I was putting from a very undeveloped mind or a very naive and ignorant and arrogant mind, putting 2 and 2 together. Oh, what I do see of my father and what I have witnessed, what I see on the film is filling in the gaps of what I see at home, because he's dressing like them, he has money like them, who he rides with is like them in the movies. And then on top of that, you got the other elements I speak of, the Alpos, the Fat Cats, the Pappy Masons, and all of them, and they're getting it. They're getting money. They're getting what we call now the bag, that bag. So, I thought that was my destiny. I wasn't trying to hear what was going on in school because they wasn't presenting anything in front of me that was relatable. They weren't showing me a house with no heat sometimes. They wasn't showing me when, a Black family, mine in particular, had to make ends meet and really struggle. And my parents was excellent. Our Christmases was great. Our birthdays was great. But then when I became of age, and went through schools and, wanted to get what I saw cats in the streets had, the jewelry, the money, the cars, especially the women, all of that. That meant was what I wanted. And that was my inspiration, aspiration, and my roadmap, so to speak. But as I speak along with that, my testimony, and it's true, that God used hip hop to save my life because I was around at the time of the birth of it. We started hearing about it in Queens, and I was interested in what was attracting the girls, what was getting the girls' attention. So I wasn't serious about it. I just happened to be, some would say, good at it. But so fast forward somewhat to today. So that's that.
So I was gonna ask you that too. You were there for the beginning of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like, how was that? Like, where did you hear it first, and how did you get into it?
Well, I was introduced to it really, or what allured me to it unknowingly was really the fashion. I liked the gear a lot, what was popular back then. The first high school that I went to and got kicked out of was a high school of art and design. I ended up becoming befriended by, interestingly enough, 4 other guys, and each one of them was from each borough of New York. So I was unknowingly exposed to their culture, their way. And, and they, at the time, my father was in prison doing quite a stretch for bank robbery. So for me, when, people in that life would have to be in prison, things would get kind of tight with the money. You had to hold it down till they get out or something else happens. So for me, I really didn't have what these other 4 guys and other people in the culture had. They had the latest coat, which back then was the sheepskin, the quarterfield, all of that, the latest gear when it came to the kicks, the British Walkers, the Pumas, the Adidas. Nikes wasn't even a factor then. It wasn't such thing. It was Nike. Was no such thing as Nikes. It was
no Jordan.
None of that. It was not, because Jordan wasn't even then around that time. So you're looking at Adidas, Pumas, and if you couldn't afford those, the Adidas were more expensive. They were $45. You could do the Pumas for $36. But the ones that was acceptable and affordable was what you call the Uptowners. They were Pro-Keds with the 3 stripes, and you could get them in different colors to match your gear. So they had all of that. But then they would, like I said, they befriended me. They allowed me to hang out with them for what reason, I don't know, because I was like the nerd at the time, and just not up to date with the latest gear. But I hung out with them, and they were artists, incredible artists, drawing, painting, airbrushing, graffiti, the whole 9. But what introduced me to the music was a track called Apache. And it became a big mystery because every time it either just played or I had left and it did play, it took what felt like forever for me to finally hear that record with that break beat that was pretty much the unofficial anthem of breakdancers. Now I'm getting slowly but surely getting into it. And remember, it wasn't called hip hop. Yeah. That's why when I teach it and I speak on it, I say what eventually would be known as hip hop. So that was my introduction to it. And then hanging out with a group of cats as I began to get more momentum, more becoming my own, more credible, yada, yada, yada. I started hanging out with a group of cats in my own neighborhood where we were fearless. We went to other boroughs where
could you say that name again? Could you say that name again? You had it was freezing out.
I forgot what part you're talking about.
The group, you said you hung around with a group of people.
I hung around with a group of friends from my neighborhood, and we were fearless in regards to we were so into what was going on in other boroughs. We didn't care about what trouble or getting jumped would happen, because the thing about Queens cats is you had to really have heart or know somebody or did time with somebody, or had a family member that lived in the Bronx or lived in Brooklyn or lived in Harlem. We really didn't have that. One guy I hung out with, he did have a cousin up in Harlem, but we ventured out to where a lot, well, I wouldn't say a lot, where some Queens cats wouldn't dare to go. We were there. So, that was my introduction to what would eventually be called hip hop.
Okay, so they didn't have a name for it at all?
No, it's just, are they jamming in the park? Okay. Who's rocking in the park? The MC thing kind of came later. You did have the break dancing and stuff. It was a party. Are they jamming? Are they jamming in the park? Yeah. Who's playing in the park?
Okay. So one thing I found interesting is you and Kid, both names are Christopher. So how did you meet Kid, Christopher Reed, and how did the name Kid and Play come about?
Kid was somebody I began to notice from afar. We had a mutual friend by the name of Romeo, Jerome Doss, who played a lot of basketball, and Kid played ball. I didn't play ball. I'm not athletically inclined at all, and neither do I want to be. And even at the time, but during the daytime, him and Kid would be playing ball in favorite park that everybody went to, and I wouldn't come out till like we're talking summertime or even winter, but in particular when I tell this part, summertime, I wouldn't really come out until the sun started going down because it was crazy hot. We had our heat waves and stuff. And plus, I didn't want to be all sweated up in whatever gear that I felt good about every day. So when I came to the park to meet up with Rome, Kid would be leaving because his father was really, really tight, was really, really, what do you call it?
Strict.
Very strict. So he had to go home. And then I'd take over. My shift would be with our dude, Rome, and we'd hang out all hours of the night, be up to no good, all of that kind of stuff. So eventually, as time went on, kids started hanging out more. I started getting somewhat impressed with him because no matter what he looked like, which he'll even tell you himself, very nerd-like, very thick glasses he had to wear, afro, light skin, almost white. But he always had on the tightest gear, whether it be Adidas, back then was the Jordache or the Calvin Klein jeans. His game was tight for a nerd, And, after a while, it just got to the point where we just started hanging out, especially if Rome wasn't around. And I began to find him intriguing because the way he talked, words he used and stuff, I saw an opportunity in that to use those words to be able to engage with a different class of women now, or girls. And the same thing running game in the streets. It could make you exceptional. There was a cat, the Intelligent Hoodlum from Queensbridge. That was his thing back in the days. He was called the Intelligent Hoodlum, part of that whole Queensbridge crowd in Queens. But yeah, I just wanted to be able to be diverse, knowledgeable, for whatever I was up to at the time, to be as diverse as possible.
Okay.